And we are live. This podcast is brought to you by Celsius.
Celsius, boys.
And Shure SM7B headphones. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh,
up,
man.
Sean?
Cheers,
Good
bro.
morning, buddy.
Cheers. Good morning.
Well,
Top of the morning.
It's not too early to start drinking Celsius, is it?
It's never too early. It's never
Not
too
early.
late, depending on what you got for your afternoon activity.
Well,
Yeah,
welcome, Sean, my man. Welcome.
Pleasure, man.
I would
Always
say
a pleasure.
I would say welcome back because technically we shot a whole podcast, and it's sitting on my drive somewhere along with a lot of other unedited stuff. But I think
Sure, you got plenty.
yeah. You know what's funny is like we were supposed to start recording like 20 minutes ago, and then as usual we got into like 20 conversations because it's just really easy for us to talk.
Yeah, bro. That's what happens, though. When you got two, I feel like, very smart people, and they're good at what they do, and you just kind of bounce good ideas off each other, man.
Hey, you said it. You said it. I didn't.
No arrogance, you know what I'm saying? It's just good energy, man. Always.
Always, bro. Always.
Yeah, always, man.
Yeah. Now you made a comment like, man, are you getting sponsored by like Celsius? I was like, I'm trying, man. If I leave this on the table for every episode, and you start blowing up with this,
They might need to cut a check.
they need to cut a check.
Cut the check
They need to cut a check.
right now.
We're smart dudes.
Just saying, bro.
So what do you want to talk about, man? I know I'm like new to this podcasting thing, and I kind of realized like me and you, I don't think we need an outline or a script. We can just kind of go off the cuff a little bit. So
Yeah.
tell me about Sean's deepest, darkest secret.
That was actually fire the last time, man. So I really don't have any secrets. I kind of went into that before, as far as what I would I don't know.
We won't go back there. We won't go back there. We won't go back there.
That was long and drawn out,
line. We
man.
already used that line. Man, I met you through we're at the same brokerage, Pearson Smith Realty.
Yeah.
The best brokerage, I would say. And you know what's funny is like I'm not one of these hey, you should join. I just don't like doing that, to be honest. It's just not me, but I do think it. I really do think it. I look at certain agents at certain places, and I'm really not going to say any names. I'm like, man, you're getting the Suge Knight deal right now. You are getting the Suge Knight deal.
The whole Suge Knight.
Bad.
The whole Suge Knight.
Gosh.
Bro. Like hanging them over the balcony. Like Death Row Records, bro. Y'all got Death Row Realty. That's where y'all at right now. Like, come on, man.
All
Come
in the
on,
music
man.
video. No, it's I don't know, man. Like I feel blessed because I got into this and I definitely looked at my options. You know, I did the math. It's a big decision to make. And it just so happened I had a good friend, Brock Harris, who kind of gave me my start in real estate. Definitely gave me my start in real estate. Believed in me when nobody else did. And he was there, and he was at PSR. He's still at PSR.
Yeah.
Little break in between, but I think now that I know even more about the business, I mean, I don't think there's a better place to be. Just and objectively, and like just in case you're watching this, I'm not saying that because if you're an agent and you're watching this, I'm not saying that because I'm trying to recruit you. Not even on like the ninja like subliminal messaging kind of deal.
For sure.
It just is like I don't know. Like I literally have not, and I've looked everywhere. And I've seen a lot of people make promises in the industry, and
yeah, man. So, what do you think was one of the main? What do you think was one of the main things that brought you to PSR? Like, what was something that just stood out to you as an individual that was like, this is the place for me to be?
Man, I can't say it's one thing, right? Because, and I'll definitely tell you the three big ones because I know it. It's money, culture, and tech. That's it. Downright, no other thing about it, but it's not one or the other, right? Now, at the time that I started real estate and tech, because tech has changed a lot, PSR by far had the best tech stack. And it's a little overwhelming if you're not a tech person like me, because there's all these different parts. But what you see a lot of these big conglomerate type companies do is they sell their agents like a product, right?
Sure.
They say like, hey, we want you to use whatever core, or we want you to use this. And the reason they're doing that is because they have like deals on the back end where they're putting out, in software world, you call it like an MVP, which is like a minimum viable product. And then you make it better. at the expense of the agent being the one who gets to complain about it and then they make it better. Whereas the PSR route at the time was we just want to get the best stuff and we'll pay out of our money to get it for you.
Right.
We're talking the boom towns. We're talking the listing the leads. We're talking Spacio. We're talking about all these different things. So I look at
Happy
that.
Grasshopper. I mean, there's tons.
Yeah, and you don't have to use it.
Right.
Which a lot of agents don't because they struggle with that stuff, which is, why before I got into production, I was making a pretty decent living on the consulting side.
Yeah.
Just helping people utilize these things at a high level. But then on the money side, I mean, that's kind of self-explanatory. I'm not even going to get into that. Just money. It just still makes more
just
sense
numbers,
than anything
bro.
I've personally seen, and I've looked. And then the culture side, man. It's like before I got licensed, I had the luxury of being in our forums and seeing like Scott Ailing, seeing people jump on there, seeing like Eric himself, just very much like an authentically like. Dude was literally wearing like basketball shorts and a hat, and I'm like, that's like the new rich man vibe.
Yeah, just super down to earth, man. But all about the business, bro. Like,
Yeah,
that's. I think for me, that was one of the main things as well. Is like not necessarily the tech side, because when you first get into real estate, right? And I have a lot of people that reach out to me like, what do I got to do? Like, how do I get involved in the real estate? And where do I sign up for courses and that kind of stuff, right? But like, you don't know what you don't know when you're first getting into the business, right? So it's like you go around and you talk to different brokerages and you see what they offer. But for me, 100%, it was the culture, right? Because I feel like me being a person who's very big on energy and body language and like how people greet me, who can I relate to, right? And I feel like just people in general, right? No matter what industry they're in, they're looking for people that they can connect with. And for me, interviewing at X, Y, and Z brokerages, I felt like I was sticking out like an orange hat. You know what I'm saying? Like, I felt like way out of place. But then when I went to PSR, I'm like, man, I'm seeing younger people than myself who at the time, I mean, I was like maybe 30 when I first joined PSR, but there were people that were younger than me. There were people that were older than me. Every different culture, you know what I mean? And race and people just, it was like the melting pot. And for me, that was just like inspiring that there are so many people that look like me, that don't look like me, younger, older, middle age. It was just like a mix up and everybody willing to share their information. And I was just like, man, this is where I want to be.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
It was just like, yeah.
Like
this is it.
Something that just came to mind when you talked about that is like, when I got into real estate, like I always thought there was a dress code. And definitely there is a dress code. There's like a certain, like to me, there's like a minimum thing. But like,
Right.
you never, did you ever feel that pressure? Because like I see you, and you definitely like you do not stray from who you are and your identity and what you like and what you don't like from a fashion standpoint. But I'm curious, like when you started, like 6-7 years ago, something like that. At this point,
Yeah, definitely.
were you wearing the monkey suit? Because I was wearing the monkey suit the first couple of weeks.
I mean, so I say, look, to each their own, right? And I feel like in different markets, the way that you dress, obviously your vibe attracts your tribe, right? So I wore the suits, but I came from a background where wearing suits every day was already a thing, right? Like I came from, 6, almost 7 years in the mattress industry wearing suits and ties every day. So my tie collection was already sick. My suit collection was already on point. So I was just like every day, I'm sharp as a tack everywhere I went.
Yeah, you like wearing it. Yeah.
I loved wearing it.
You still do, I imagine.
I still, yeah. I mean, if the occasion calls for it, right? But at the same time, like coming from that kind of industry where I had to wear suits and ties because you obviously have products in the store that are, thousands of dollars up to $10,000. So it's like people aren't gonna just see you and automatically know that you're educated to talk about 60 or 70, 80 different beds, right? So it's like, you got to look the part, right? Like car salesmen, you know what I'm saying? And that's what we used to get compared to. And I hated that comparison, right? Because And I know great car salesmen. Don't get me wrong. It's not a shot at anybody in the car industry.
No,
Some of the
it's like that
best people.
stereotype of like the '80s car salesman that we see. On, like,
Matilda's dad.
Matilda's dad on the infomercial. Yeah,
Yeah,
like
bro.
that.
It was never about that for me. So when I really got involved and I started meeting people and I started realizing like, man, they're not talking to me for how I'm dressed. You have to let your education shine through, right? So for me, it was like I slowly started to get more comfortable. Like I would still wear like the blazer and the jeans, and then slowly started changing the
Right.
dress shoes to like some nice little chukka boots or something, you know, like
Sure.
trying to just still stay professional, but to each their own, man. I mean, you know, if I still need to get fresh, I will, but
See, the thing with me is like, I get that and I believe in that. The problem I had, I think, early on, especially, was like I just was not comfortable. Just to
mm,
piggyback on what you said, like I'm wearing this suit and it just didn't feel like me because I've been, kind of not having to do that for a very long time. And I've like worked in hospitals. I've worked where like I've had to really dress up and show up in a uniform. But starting out, everything's already so brand new. And
right.
then it feels like all these different things are like I'm trying to be somebody I'm not. It's kind of the feeling, right? And today, there's kind of like a running joke in real estate. Is like, here's what I look like on my first showing, and here's what I look like after the third showing with the new client, right?
In pajama pants, fresh out of bed, bro.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So it is obviously people are buying a house, right? So there's a huge trust factor in that whole thing, which is where even when I get on these like started doing this podcast thing, I was like, I have those questions in my head. I'm like, oh gosh, I'm gonna put this out there, and how much of myself do I want to be because people aren't gonna trust me and they're gonna look me up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, at the end of the day, I know that I'm really, really, really good at what I do, and I definitely don't want to worry too much about depicting myself a certain way, right? I think there's too much of that already. Of like everyone tries to like put this mask on, dress up, put this whole like image together, and then put it out on social media. And I'm guilty of doing that too, which I don't think it's a thing to feel guilty about.
Yeah.
But with this whole podcasting thing, I'm still trying to find my identity where I'm going with it, obviously. But I just don't want to. You go crazy trying to like be something you're not, right?
Nah. And I mean, a lot of my clients are still friends with me, you know, to this day. There's very few clients that I haven't spoken to in a while. But most of them will tell you, like, Sean is one of the most down to earth people in terms of like how he dresses, right? So actually a buddy of mine, Jason, and his wife Courtney, we were out looking at houses one day here in Winchester, and we showed up, and their agent, there was another couple there with their agent, right? And this agent's decked out, suit, BMW, like dressed to impress, you know what I mean? And they're like, man, they're looking at Sean like, who's that guy with them? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, your boy was too casual. I'm out here with the Nike on, like, but I know them. We have a great relationship. And I feel like to a different extent, depending on your relationship with the people, right? Like, you're always going to try to present yourself a little bit differently in the beginning because you do want to come off like, hey, look, I am a professional. I'm not going to like intimidate you because of how I'm dressed, depending on what we're looking at or the price point. You know, people do take that into consideration with the purchase price of the homes that they're looking at. So it's like if I'm going to, Alexandria or DC or Arlington, yeah, there's probably more people that do wear suits and ties every day, and it's just the norm. So I might change the way that I'm going to dress when I go to meet a client there, as opposed to here. Like, I don't want to show up to a, 700,000-800,000 plus, condo or something like that, and I got a Nike Tech outfit on, and there's suits and ties, and they're like,
What's funny
who
about
is
that
this
is
guy, bro?
what's funny about
You
that
know
is
what I mean?
right. One of my first showings for $1 million property, I'm like, oh, I got to dress to the T.
Yeah.
I show up and they're wearing like a tracksuit, straight up wearing like a tracksuit suit. It's like, oh man, am I trying too hard right now? Like,
you're a try hard. That's what my kids say. You're a try hard. Yeah. So, it can happen. But getting back to it, when you first get into business, finding your identity is extremely important because you don't really know, how you should dress. There's no outline to real estate. Like when you first get into it and you take your courses and you pass your exam through whatever school you're going through, and then you take your PSI test and you're like, I passed, great. Hey, I'm licensed to everybody. Like you're posted it on your social medias, and it's like, yo, I'm so excited. Like I can sell houses now. And then it's like, now what? You know what I'm
Yeah,
saying? Like
yeah,
now
yeah.
where do I go? Now what do I actually do? How do I meet people? How do I and the thing is, it was crazy. It's like, just as well as I do, like the majority of that information that you take in doesn't really teach you about
Mm,
real estate,
mm.
for real real estate. Like it's to keep you out of jail,
Yeah,
more importantly,
yeah.
right? And that's
Teach you how to not get sued, how to not get the broker sued is basically the
yeah,
gist
yeah.
of it, right?
The safety.
Which
It's
is
the
important.
safety
Which
of
is
it. Yeah.
important. You got to know those things. But as far as the business, as far as negotiating, as far as dealing with people and not just the clients, right? Like that's
Hmm.
honestly easier a lot of times than dealing with some other agents. And that, not that they're being unreasonable or rash or anything, but you have to have some level of diplomacy when you're trying to
Right.
get stuff worked out, right, for your clients.
For
And
sure.
so some people really bring their ego into transactions, which is a whole other story, which I don't know if we even want to go that route right now.
I mean, I feel like you can touch on any topic, right? Because, like I said, I'm not really one for secrets, and people want to know the good as well as the bad, and the ups and the downs. So, I mean, and anybody can have egos, but that, again, that's an industry. That's any industry. That's not just real estate, right? No matter who people are, when they feel that they have an important responsibility, right? And real estate is one of those types of industries where every detail can be extremely important for you, right? But
Let me ask you
the
this.
ego can get in the way
Yeah, 100%,
of some
100%.
people. Yeah.
Let me ask you this, because this is something that's on my mind. What do you think, from a consumer standpoint, somebody who's trying to buy or sell real estate
Mhm.
or rent, right? What do you think is the biggest problem with the real estate industry?
Ooh, man. Um, I feel like the biggest problem with anybody trying to get into real estate, like buying, selling, renting.
I'll give you my answer, right? And this is only from like, and kind of going back on what we just said. I've only come to this conclusion from being in it long enough, and in the market we're in right now, and we're headed to probably for a significant amount of time. I think one of the biggest hidden issues from a consumer standpoint, and something that the industry as a whole has not done anything to really safeguard against, is what is the financial standing of your fiduciary? What is the financial standing of your realtor? Because I think that has such a big impact on the consumer potentially, right? And let me tee this up. If you hire an agent and you don't know that they are having financial problems, right, which are probably going to become more and more of a thing as the market slows down, we have lower transaction volume.
Hmm.
Now that agent is financially incentivized to say one thing versus the other, to sell versus advise. And that to me is a huge problem that has never come up.
Yeah. I mean, I will 100% agree, I would say, as far as like the challenges that people face, affordability, but people, like you said, not really discussing all of the pros and the cons of making that decision, right? And like, I feel like that's maybe where realtors can get a bad rep, is like you're constantly talking about why you should buy, why you should buy. Is it a good time to buy? Is it a bad time to buy? Well, of course, we're going to tell you it's always a good time to buy, right? Because we know, and this is not rocket science, like if you rent a place, like just like if you go to rent a car, if I go to Enterprise right now and I say, yo, I need a car for a week, and then I got to come back, I'm going to need this for a month, I'm going to need it for a year. Well, I'm just forking out money and I'm not getting any return on it. And I better make sure I have good insurance on it, because if something happens, they're going to beat me upside my head, right? So it's the same thing when you rent a property. You're not gaining anything from it. right? And that's where the affordability part is. That you have to do it only if it makes sense for you. And if you see yourself like, I don't want to move, I hate where I'm at, I can't have pets, I can't paint, I can't do blah 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 blah, right? I can't do the things that I want to do. Real estate is one of the only industries where you are guaranteed, almost guaranteed. I never want to say anything's guaranteed, right? Life is crazy, that things are ups and downs, right? But real estate is one of the surefire ways to create wealth, because no matter if you're renting a place for 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and you've been there, and that's the problem that I run into with so many people that reach out to me, and I hate this. I hate the system of America, right? Because things get so hard for people, and they kind of get stuck in this repetitive cycle of, I have to keep renting, I got to keep renting, and I got to keep paying the rent every single month. And then boom, landlord pops up, Sean, I need help. What can I do? Because now the landlord wants to sell the place and they gave me 30 days to move out. And I'm like, I'm scrolling back in our chat and we've talked for 2 years and I've been trying to help you and explain to you how you can beat that system. Just like if you rent, you got to fight to get your security deposit back after 2 years, 3 years, clean and shampoo carpets and wipe down walls just to get back your security deposit. So you might have had a, $1,000 deposit. You got to fight to get that back, probably spend $400 trying to get that 1,000 back. If that was your home and you owned it for 2-3 years, I haven't had a single client that's sold in the last 5 or 6 years that's walked away with less than $30,000. A $30,000 check just to pay the same bills they're already paying. So for me, it was like, it makes sense financially for every person if it's a good time for you. If you're responsible enough to manage that payment, do it. That's it. There's no in between. I can't tell you if it's a great time for you. I can't tell you if it's a bad time for you. I can just say, if it makes sense for you, do it. If it doesn't make sense for you, don't do it. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, like I think I take a little bit of a different approach in the way I look at it, and that, like, I never want to tell somebody what the future value of their money is, right? And this is kind of like a financial term, and I'm not a financial advisor at the end of the day.
Right.
I can't tell you what's going to happen next year or the year after. I can't tell you that you're going to win in the long run because, like, I don't know. Like the thing I look at is, like, we just had a pandemic that a lot of people have died, right? So what if there's another pandemic and you almost died in it? Which we can jump into.
Almost
you
one of them,
were
right?
literally on your deathbed from said pandemic. So it's like, in the supply and demand factor, and like we can talk about interest rates all that. That's what everybody wants to talk about. It's like interest rates. The rates are what the rates are. Until they start firing a lot of people and they lose their jobs, the rates aren't going to go down, right? My take on that. Not trying to spread it as gospel. But at the end of the day, if there's a pandemic and half of the population gets wiped out, all of a sudden the supply and demand kind of goes in a different direction. So theoretically, in this position, yeah, your home price is going to go down. And they're probably not going to forgive you too much on your mortgage payment because that's just the way banks work. But who knows? Like, I don't know. Like, I can't guarantee you one way or another. But what I can say is, from experience, anecdotal information, is a lot of people a year and a half ago, that were extremely concerned, rightfully so, with what happened. Rates kind of just blew up. They now have more equity, right? So if you go back to that beautiful Z estimate, which people dog on a lot, but it's within 3% according to their data. Haven't fact checked it too much myself, but it's pretty close. I look at them all the time. I don't know. Like, I just don't know. Like, that's my answer in a roundabout way. I can't tell you what your risk tolerance is as an individual.
Right.
I can't tell you that, like, hey, is it worse if you end up having to be underwater on your mortgage for 5 years and you can still afford that payment, but like the mental, emotional stress that you can take on during that period. And I don't know if it's going to go that way. It might go great. Hey,
It might go great.
So
It might
it's just,
not.
I just don't know. And I try not to overwhelm people from that standpoint. But when the question comes up, like, I'm just really honest about it. I'm like, dude, not an economist. Like, this is what's happening. This is kind of what has happened historically. I can give you these articles. I can kind of give you my 2 cents on it. But the best part about life, right? It's the unknown.
It's the unknown. Nah, that's 100% accurate, man. There's so many unknown variables. I mean, life in general. I mean, we see things in the world and how it is. But I mean, from a real estate standpoint, right? Like, when was the last time we saw a decrease in rent?
Yeah, that's
So it's like,
yeah.
and it's crazy, right? Like, I mean, from every market being hyper local, meaning like what is taking place in this market doesn't mean the city over from you things are exactly the same, right? So it's like some people can be paying, way over asking price in this market. This market over here, you might be able to go in and say, hey, I need, the closing costs and I want all these things repaired. But then we might drive an hour into Northern Virginia and it's like, oh yeah, we're gonna pay 50 grand over for this house.
Right, and waive
Every
everything.
market is hyper local.
Waive everything. Sign away my firstborn.
Right. But what we do know in every single market is that rent continues to increase. We're not seeing a decrease in rent.
I'm curious. I'm curious, actually.
Sure.
When was the first time you rented?
The first time I rented, man, I was 19.
Was that in Winchester?
It was. Yeah.
How much was your rent? How much was your rent?
It was a magic number. And what's crazy is I was struggling then. So I can't even remember, or I can't even calculate in my mind how stressful it would be now. But my first apartment was a 2-bedroom apartment here in Winchester, and $750.
$750 for a 2-bedroom apartment in
$750.
Winchester. Where was it? What street?
Northside Village.
Northside? Okay.
Yeah, over near the bowling alley here in Winchester. It was like on the back side of there. But
And what year was that?
2007,
2007, right?
2006 or something like that.
I think we should look it up. How much is rent there now? Look it up. Pull it up. Pull it up. We can cut this out on the podcast so we're not making these people wait. But I really want to pull this number up. I really want to pull this number up.
I gotta pull it up now.
Where's my phone? I'm gonna pull up mine too. I'm gonna pull up mine because I was in Tampa. I grew up in Tampa, so back then. Oh man, yeah, it's doubled up at my place. Yeah, wow, it looks different too. He painted and everything. There's a mural on there. Wow, this looks way better than when I lived there. But it was a 1-bedroom, 1-bath studio apartment, 550 square feet in downtown Tampa. I used to live right next to this club. And it was loud at that club. I saw a guy get tased on a monthly basis. The cops would be posted outside of that club. They would tase somebody on a monthly basis. So I guess that's the amenities I got for $700 a month at this 1-bedroom, 1-bath studio apartment. But today's rent on that is $1,595.
$1,595.
More than doubled on the rent since, and I rented that in 2011. 2011. So yeah, rents definitely have not gone down.
It's not going down.
It definitely has not gone down. But I will say that wages have gone up, probably like 20% since then. It doesn't.
I mean,
it's not really.
Depending on where you're at, and your willingness to commute in some cases. You know what I'm saying? Because it's a challenge, man. But that's. Aside from, what the rent is over there, I know it's obviously way higher than what I paid at that point. That was the bigger eye opener for me when I first got into real estate because, the reason I wanted to get into real estate, again, coming from a sales background, was I didn't go to college, even though I got accepted to 2 schools. I got accepted to West Virginia State College at the time, which is down in Charleston, and I got accepted to Shepherd University, and I didn't go. I didn't pursue it because I had no idea what I wanted to do. And at the time, partying was like number one for me. It's like I had friends that were older than me that were partying their way back home. Yeah. So it's like they were going to WVU, and I used to take trips to WVU. Shout out to my Mountaineers and the partying down on High Street and all the clubs that used to be out there. But man, I had a lot of people that I saw go to college and then come back home. And I was just like, I don't want that responsibility of having to owe a college at that point, 40, 50, 60,000. Like, how am I going to afford to pay this off? I don't want to be the guy who's going to school with no goal set, right? And like college, I'm all for college if whatever you're trying to do requires that college education. Um, as we know in this world, 2023, education is key. People always say work smarter, not harder. There's a reason that saying exists because you got to be smarter to earn more.
I think the big lie there though was like where to get the education. I don't think it was a lie. I think it was
Facts.
just like
Facts.
it was just like ignorance in a sense. And the world has changed a lot. And that like
Yeah.
like if I popped on YouTube in 2009, I was probably looking at like cats playing keyboards. But now if I pop on YouTube, I can learn how to play the keyboard from like 1,000 different people, and like a few of them I will just personally be able to learn a little bit better from because of their way of speaking, their way of presentation, their way of creating that video of how to learn. And that's where I see the world is a lot easier to become. There's this term like autodidact, right? Like you're like self-taught, which I don't think I am because I, to an extent, I guess I don't really know how you define that, but I'm all this stuff that I've been doing the last year and a half, 2 years, even in real estate. I actually learned. Okay, let me rephrase that. I've learned a lot from mentors, for sure, right? Like I almost feel like an apprentice in real estate because I got the luxury of 3.5 years of like doing transaction coordination, doing inside sales, and learning the business instead of just getting dropped into it, like just
For sure.
like Sparta kick. Like off that movie 300, like just getting kicked into the well. That's how I feel like a lot of agents get into the business.
Shout out to the
They're
Spartans.
they're like saying they're like, yeah, I got my license, and then somebody just like drop kicks them into the well. So I didn't have
This
that.
is real estate.
This is real estate.
Yeah, bro. That's a true story though, man. True story.
So, I didn't have that experience entirely, but I really feel like I went to the school of YouTube for so many things that I've learned. But the skill in that is knowing who not to listen to. Because there are a lot of people selling some BS products and
Bad
some
information.
BS stuff, bad information, misinformation, disinformation. Well, I think the Russians have a word for it, disinformatia. And it's like, so the skill is in like learning who not to listen to and who to listen to. And there's a lot of false prophets in real estate. Let me tell you that.
Definitely is, man. That was an excellent impression you did. I just gotta say that because I'm not really one. So that was funny, man.
We gotta pause.
All right. All right.
So did you have anyone like in particular that kind of mentored you early on?
I did have a friend of mine. We haven't talked in a little while, but actually, a girl named Lauren Rogers was the first person that helped me with my first transaction. Like she literally met me at the office. I called her up. I'm like, hey, I got my first deal. I'm all excited. It was a place in Chantilly. And she was like, that's phenomenal. We had like a whole team. So shout out to my old Wednesday crew, Dan McNeil, my homegirl Keisha Washington, Richard Johnson, Dan Boris, like all of us, man. We used to just hang in the office every Wednesday and just like, do our thing. But nonetheless, she actually walked me through my entire first transaction. And I didn't know a thing. You know what I'm saying? I literally did not know a thing. So I showed up and I remember as she was going through and she was so thorough, but I'm a visual person. And she kept saying, are you going to take any notes? She's like, you're not saying anything. You're not writing anything down. And I'm like, I'm watching. I'm taking in everything you're doing. And so I watched everything that she did. She did such a thorough job of explaining every piece of that contract. So that was like 100%. My complete mentor lesson was the first one. Everything that I've learned was, I will give her 100% credit for that. Like she walked me through my first deal and then my second deal. I got it. I did the whole contract by myself. She was like, wait, you got another deal? You didn't call me. You didn't tell me you needed help. I was like, you taught me everything on the first go. Right? So quite literally, man, like since then, everything else, like she did such a thorough job of explaining like every document, every addendum, all the check boxes, making sure what is what, you know what I mean, on the contract without going into the details of it. But that was the only person that really walked me through, my first contract and that whole experience. So aside from that, nah, I've been by myself, and it definitely holds its challenges when you don't have a mentor. Like, I find great value in mentors, and especially if you're a person that doesn't really know and you need structure. Like, mentors are great, but me, like, I was such a kind of a loner, like a lone wolf in a way,
Right.
So
I would say I'm kind of similar in that way. I don't have any trouble asking for help now. I think, like, when I was younger, I definitely, like, I felt like even in school there were stupid questions, and
Yeah.
even though there weren't, like, if you don't know, you don't know. Like, you ask the question, right?
Right.
But when I was in high school and middle school, that was definitely my personality. And it doesn't make you less than to not know something. It makes you
Right.
less than in this business to not know something and move forward anyway. And that, to me, is not good, especially when you're dealing with such a massive thing, right? So I would say, for me, even today, when I know the answer, like the other day, I knew the answer. I knew the exact answer, and the problem it wasn't even a problem yet, but it could have become a problem. And because of the time is of the essence part, I said, let me get ahead of this and have a game plan in case this happens. So I do what I do, which is I contacted two people, and one of them's not even at PSR. He's someone local, Paul Gallagher, who's been in the business a very long time, who I respect, who I admire. I contacted you. And then I also contacted the broker because I wanted to just let the broker get their answer on it, get their perspective. And I heard the same thing 3 times over with some nuance in between. And that to me is doing my due diligence and making sure I'm protecting my client. Even though I thought I knew the answer, I wanted to make sure. I wanted to make sure that I'm doing everything I can to protect my clients. Even with 5 years of experience, I still do that. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that.
No, absolutely, and I wholeheartedly agree. So I can see the error in the way. So it's not to say that I wouldn't periodically reach out, like Mike Snow. Like, he helped me a lot in the very beginning. I just kind of naturally gravitated towards him to get his input on certain things. But, like, I did a lot of the reading, studying, and I have a lot of friends in real estate. So, like, that's not saying that I didn't have, like, any helping hands along the way. I just didn't have, like, a one-on-one, like, mentor, daily, weekly. Like, I'm meeting with this person. We're going over ins and outs of this and that. But like I said, I found a lot of value in my old Wednesday crew, right? Because we were so new. We all started at the same time. And now every last one of them are doing their thing. They're all rock stars and, maintaining. But we found a lot of value in, the challenges that we faced in certain transactions. So it's like, if there was something that I was going through that I had never been through, and I'm like, man, what would you do? Like, oh yeah, you just got to do this. And it'd be, something so simple. So there's great value in having resources and people that you can reach out to and kind of lean on, because you absolutely need it. And that's one thing that I really enjoy about this business, is that every single transaction is different. It doesn't matter how many you do. Every one of them is different. Every scenario is different, because people are all different. You have different relationships with the clients. You have different relationships with other real estate agents and lenders involved. And you got home inspectors. So you're always learning different things and different ways to navigate through the business. So,
and it's what keeps it fun for us. I think that's why, like, there's so much uncertainty in this business. We are 1099. We are essentially contractors, and we have to take care of ourselves financially, right?
yeah.
But in that, I enjoy the variety, right? There are no 2 transactions that are identical. There's always going to be some learning, and we're seeing massive, massive changes in this industry. And I look at people who are at the other agents that are at these places, and I kind of wonder, I'm like, are you getting the support that we get? Because I get to hop into our forums with 1,000 agents and like 7 brokers and get different answers and different perspectives in real time. And shout out to Chris Boris, shout out to Tim Trainum, shout out to so many different people. I can't even sit here and roll them off. Like, even
Tim's like Google, man, like literally the Google of real estate.
Dude, I read Tim Trainum's answers on the forums
all the time,
and I feel smarter and dumber at the same time at the end of reading those. And I'm like, wow, like I just learned so much, but I feel really dumb as a human being because this
Yeah.
guy is just so smart. He has such a sharp analytical mind, and I think he's literally a lawyer. I'm not sure. Is he a lawyer?
I don't know. He's like Wikipedia for real estate. Like literally, like that's the best description I can say for some of his answers because they're all super in depth. Everything. It's not a short answer, but it's like
No.
so descriptive and paints the whole scenario and the what ifs and the what could be or couldn't be. Like
I feel like I get $100 every time. Like I feel like I just got $100 gift card every time I read one of his posts. They are detailed. They are very very detailed.
shout out to Tim Trainer, man.
Shout out to Tim Trainer.
Yes, very, very good.
And shout out to Dan McNeil too, man. You know, Dan
That's my
is
guy,
like, I had
man.
my surgery and you called me and Brock called me and Jaya Tawny called me.
Yes.
And Garan called me and Dan McNeil called me. And Dan is one of those guys that will just randomly call me. She's like, how you doing, man? Like no real estate talk, nothing. I just want to know how you're doing today. And I'm
Yeah.
like, dude, he's like Mr. Rogers.
Yeah, man, I love Dan. Shout out to Dan, bro. I love Dan with my whole heart, man. Like we have been great friends for a long time, and you know, it just he does, man. He just like holds a special place.
He
You know
does,
what I'm
he
saying?
does.
Like
He's
he really
a
does.
genuinely good person.
Yeah.
A genuinely good dude.
Yep, 100%, man. But yeah, like you're saying, man. I mean, you know, as far as like the mentor aspect of it, we all leaned on each other. You know, we all leaned on each other, and that's the best part. I feel like within a brokerage, right? And that's why I said like I have different agents that have reached out to me, not saying that who they're with or anything like that, but they're just not feeling it or they're not getting the value and stuff like that. But I'm like, the door's always open if you want to talk. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like anybody that's not 100% happy with where they're at in terms of real estate or the brokerage, it's worth it to at least explore and see what you find to be valuable, right? And we all know, like, if you're in the real estate industry and, you know, there's different commission splits, and not to really get into what people make and what companies are charging and that, because it's not always about the money. It's about the value and who's going to help you be more successful and more productive, and that you feel like you as an individual are making a difference. Like for me, like that's why I love real estate, because it allows me to be myself. I feel fulfilled with what I do, bringing value to people, and having the amount of transactions that I have and the amount of relationships that I've built. And there's not a single client that is like, that would tell you like, yo, Sean answers 100%. They'd be like, man, he's the worst, bro. Like trying to text this guy sometimes and he'd be just all over the place. Like, but all of us have good relationships. You know what I mean? Like I'm that friend, like I will text you back 2 days later, like nothing happened. All my friends know that. So, you know, but when it comes to, you know, real estate in general, like having the right people around you 100% matters. Like it 100% matters.
Life, right?
You
Like
know?
I think in life in general, like and you have two sons, right?
Yeah.
And I, you know, I'm curious, like how do you kind of put that into their mind of like, hey, who you associate with, who you network with? Like, I mean, what do you teach them about that kind of stuff?
Man, you know, that's a lifelong journey. It's just like any parent, right? Like if you grew up with positive parents, even through their adversary and things that they struggle with, they're constantly beating into your head why you should move correctly, why you should do this, why you shouldn't do that, or the outcome. So like I paint every single scenario, and there's nothing that, you know, I hide from my kids either. Like as far as like who I was in my previous youth, and the mistakes that I've made. Now I don't go 100% in depth as to some of the things that I was doing until they reach a certain age, right? Because especially with young males, right? Like that are, you know, growing into their adulthood, you run the risk of things sounding cool when they really weren't, right? Because you have to let them know it's like, okay, we listen to, you know, rap music, and we know, man. I mean, just in general, like if you got kids in junior high school or high school, like the amount of influences that are out there, and they're on Instagram, they're on TikTok, they're already exposed to the world, right? But there's not a lot of positive people that'll say, okay, yeah, these things look cool, right? And it might sound good and it might look good, but is it going to be good for you in the long run? So you have
Yeah.
to be able to paint the picture and explain to them, like, yo, I'm no different. The only difference is I was blessed enough to beat that and change my mental, right? Because the world is full of bad influences. It's full of influences, period. But anybody that's got eyes can see that there are more bad influences than positive influences in 2023, man. So, as far as like how I raise my kids, I don't hide anything from them. I paint the picture and I'm like just always trying to push them and encourage them to be their best self, right? Like there's a lot of parents out, and shout out to all the great parents because I know so many good ones, and we're always proud um parents and seeing the kids that get the A's and the honor roll and the B's. And like, I don't really focus on that. Like, I encourage them to do the work, right? And if you're getting a B or if you're getting a C, it doesn't mean you're dumb. It just means that maybe you didn't pick up everything that you did. And I explain to them why the A is better than the B. I explain why the B is better than the C because I put the emphasis on the work. See, the grade, and this is what I always tell them, the A, it doesn't matter. The A don't matter. It can matter if you have, you're trying to get to college, if that's the route that you're going, right? But it's the work that you did to maintain that A. It was your consistency. So that's where I put my emphasis is like, yo, are you going to be consistent? Because if you're not going to be consistent, why are you even trying? Right? Like, and I put that emphasis on them all the time. Like, don't get caught up in the smile. Don't get caught up with the nice kicks, the Nike, the Jordan. All that looks good, bro. But the minute you graduate, nobody cares about that, right? It's what you know. Are you going to apply yourself? Are you dependable? Can we count on you to do something, right? So it's the consistency, and that's where I try to put that with them. Like, I'm going to have your back 100% no matter what, but you got to be consistent.
That's awesome, man. That is awesome. Yeah, I think that's deep. That's really deep. Like for me, when I think back on myself in high school, like 9th, 10th grade, I was like straight A student, honor roll, all that stuff. And I think somewhere along the way, my grades dropped off, not by a ton necessarily. I mean, senior year, I definitely I got into college my first like 2 months in a senior year, and then I just kind of like did the bare minimum. But I think what I realized is I just didn't like playing the game. Like I wasn't passionate about it. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like a lot of like you said, you didn't go to college because you didn't know what you wanted to do. A lot of people go to college because they don't know what they want to do and they just think that's where they're supposed to go. And that's what their parents tell them. For me, I'm very much a person who has to be interested in the subject matter, and I learn on my own terms. I do not learn on the terms that school presented me with. I can. I'm very capable. My GPA in college and high school all will tell you that, but it just left me feeling like without a purpose, like I'm just learning this stuff to memorize it, to regurgitate it. Not all of it. I don't want to like blanket statement that, but for me, the learn by doing part is so big. I mean, it's not just big. It's the only way that I really truly learn a subject. And school, I think, kind of conditions you in the wrong way in that you're not learning it for a purpose other than you need to learn this so you can get to the next level. And if that is your route, as you mentioned, great. I didn't have a route. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Like I interned at a hospital, went to college, kept dropping out and switching schools and moving. And I won't regret it in that like I got to network. I learned a lot about the world in a college setting, which I think is really a lot there's a lot to say about that in general. But once I got into the real world, a lot of that kind of held me back because I didn't have a direction. I didn't have these goalposts that were kind of set for me by someone else. Now I have to set those goalposts in entrepreneurship, especially. I was completely in the dark. I don't want to say completely in the dark, but I really had to figure my own way. When you got into real estate, you already had a lot of experience in. I think you said you worked at a mattress store. I know you worked at
Yeah.
Verizon for a little bit. what was the struggle for you in becoming an entrepreneur? Because that's essentially what you are when you become a real estate agent, on top of an advisor, on top of everything else.
So the biggest challenge, getting into real estate, for me in general was the direction, right? Kind of like you said, of getting out of school and not knowing where you should go. Because for me, it was like, okay, I knew that I enjoyed working with people. Um, I love talking, with people in general. And for me, it was like, okay, this allows me to truly be myself without like the hidden motive, right? Because there's nothing that I can say. In fact, like anybody that's worked with me as far as like a client, in real estate will all tell you, like, I have tried to talk them out of certain situations because I don't want them coming back to me and going, Sean, why did you let us make this decision? Why did you say this was a good deal? And I'm like, think on it, sleep on it, like really take your time because this is a large commitment. So for me, it was, how do I go about getting business? And that's any agent. Like we all kind of struggle because there's really no direct answer. There's no one size fit all when it comes to real estate and how you get business. How do you get your name out? What do you do? So I struggled with that, just like I feel most agents would. But especially because I got licensed where I wasn't actually from, foolishly, like looking back on it. But, again, I find the silver lining with everything. So I got licensed in Virginia because I lived in Winchester. But of course, I'm from West Virginia. I'm from Charlestown. So the majority of the people that I know are from Charlestown, not, Winchester. So how does that help you in real estate, right? You got to have your sphere of influence that they call, for one of your pillars of business. Like, who are going to be the people that are going to reach out to you when you get licensed? The people that you immediately know, not necessarily the people that you don't know. So that was the thing that I struggle with, is like, I'm not from here. I don't know who to talk to. I don't have friends here that I grew up with. So it was a challenge.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was a challenge for me.
Yeah. Everyone's got a different path on those sides. Like I look at mine, and it was heavily biased into, kind of the online leads. And when we say leads, it means connecting with people through home search portals, right? And then proving my salt, making sure I can do right by them and all that fun stuff. So, Sean, I think we gotta wrap it up, man. I got a contract I gotta work on. I know you got I got a couple things going on your end too.
For sure, man.
Thanks for coming out, buddy.
We're gonna chop it up again.
all the time. Man. We're gonna make this a regular thing. We need to get the Sean Smith show going in here. So
yeah, but next episode, man, we need to talk more about V and how V got started in this.
Hey,
because
I'm a man of mystery. We gotta keep that under wraps for a little bit.
My man. Well, thank you for having me through, man. I definitely appreciate it.
Pleasure,
man.
bro.
Always a good time.
Always
a good time. All right, bro.
Woo-wee.
Too legit to quit.
What are you doing right now?